Hello everyone and welcome to this Squared Up coffee break on V2 to V3 migration. My name is Matthew Long and I'm joined today by one of my colleagues from Squared Up here, Andrew Harris. Hi Andrew.
Hi there guys, I hope you're all good.
Andrew is a member of our support test and systems team and is also actually the author of our migration tool, so he's very well placed to speak on doing a Squared Up V2 to V3 migration. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. Actually, before I start, one little note of business. The coffee break webinars update every sort of few weeks, and you'll all receive a meeting from receive an email from GoToMeetings basically saying that you need to update your calendar invites. So you should get an email if it hasn't gone out yet within the next day or two, just saying here's the new set of calendar invites. And put this in your calendar, accept that, and you won't miss any episodes. So, okay, with that admin out the way, let's get on to the topic this week. So we're looking at Squared Up V2 to V3 migration, but for those of you who are brand new V3 customers and haven't used V2, we're also going to be looking at some of the internals to V3 as well, so dashboards and dashboard packs and how things are persisted. So there hopefully will be some useful stuff here as well to people who aren't necessarily from a V2 background. That's actually my case as well. I'm not someone who's overly familiar with V2, so I'll be posing lots of questions over to Andrew. So hopefully you'll see the sort of the change in the usual sort of flow of the coffee breaks there. Okay, so what are we looking at today? Our discussion points are quite simple. We'll look at some important changes that have occurred since V2 the product. So V3 has a whole bunch of changes, but some of these are very relevant to V2 to V3 migration, specifically around migrating your dashboards across and sort of carrying on your existing approach. So we'll look at that and make sure we're sort of highlight some of the things that you really need to think about when looking at doing a migration or just starting afresh. We'll look at dashboard packs, which is how dashboards are actually stored in Squared Up. Previously, in V2, we store this all on disk as XML files. Now we use a different format and we actually store them in a slightly different way as well. So it's good to look through that and get an understanding of what dashboards actually are. And there's also, for those of you who caught our V3 V3.2 release webinar last week, there's also been some changes in this area in terms of the UI. So Andrew's got a cool demo he's going to show us how you can do stuff, including hiding certain dashboards that you might get from community packs or that you've migrated across.
Finally be able to delete those dashboards that you haven't been able to delete for a while.
Yeah, I know, that's fun. It's quite a requested feature, that one, isn't it? So it should be cool to see. And then we're going to look at the V2 to V3 migration workflow. So what are the steps that are actually involved end to end? And of course, we'll get hands-on then, because this is a coffee break, so it's not just all slides. We'll get hands-on with the migration tool as well and do some demos, some simple demos, and then also some of the more involved use cases that you might have to think about. Okay, so with that, let's have a look at some of the changes since V2. So Squared Up V3, I think we said this quite a few times now, was a complete rebuild of the product. So we didn't really carry anything over, and a lot of concepts have changed. Now, I'm actually going to advance the slide a bit more here. There's a few things that are quite important to bear in mind from a sort of architecture perspective, and the biggest being total dashboard architecture. So now in V3, we have this concept of perspectives that kind of permeates the whole product, and that really is a departure from how we used to do things in V2, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So if you previously would have built a lot of dashboards and you might have had sort of drill downs as well configured in a few places. Really now total dashboard architecture pushes you towards configuring lots of perspectives, configuring perspectives on alerts, configuring perspectives on objects, and dashboards really are sort of your entry into your monitoring information. So that's how you sort of get started. Like that's the first thing you go to in the morning, or that's how you say, here's a dashboard, to a IT stakeholder, but then perspectives of what they actually use throughout the rest of the experience. And the other change, of course, is that big change is that dashboards are now stored in dashboard packs in a JSON format. So previously, for those of you who may have tinkered with the files on disk, perhaps doing some automation to automatically spin dashboards up, that was all in XML. And now we're storing them in a different format. JSON's a lot more compact and a bit more friendly than XML. Like XML is great for you. You miss one attribute, right? And so the whole thing stops working.
It's a lot easier to fix a JSON dashboard than it is to fix an XML dashboard in version 3, definitely.
Yeah, so that JSON format change obviously is important for those of you who were previously automating things. But how we deploy dashboard packs is also quite important. So we'll look at that in the next few slides. And we can also now do side-by-side deployment. So previously, it was very difficult or wasn't supported to set up multiple instances of Squared Up. You have different servers. Now you can put lots of different instances of Squared Up on the same server. So it's very easy to do migrations between different versions or to different environments because you can deploy it side by side. So in this case, you can put V3 on the same server as V2, right?
Yeah, so you can have them both running on the same server.
Right, so no new provisioning. You can just deploy them on the same server, do your migration, and think about, okay, I'm happy with this, I'm cut over, and then you can uninstall Squared Up too, and no one notices sort of a difference there necessarily. And our plugins have been replaced by tiles as well. So although a lot of the dashboards can contain the same kind of thing like status and alerts and everything else, the actual mechanism for how that's done and the designers are all quite different, right? Yeah. And not all of the not all of the plugins have moved across yet, have they?
Yeah. So, for example, the KPI plugin hasn't been moved across; it's been replaced by the dynamic table tile.
Mm-hmm.
During the migration process, for example, we don't migrate over the KPI plugin, but we migrate all the settings, so they're placed on a sort of text tile, which you can then use to sort of send off to us if you want us to try and create a dynamic table tile for that specific object.
Right, and because dynamic table is supposed to examine the perspective lists in the product, maybe we'll talk about that in another coffee break.
Yeah.
And sort of give you a good view based on the objects you put into it. A lot of the time, you can just put a dynamic table on there, and it'll replace what you were doing with the KPI tile anyway. That's the intention.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's also some other changes we've made as well. Now, role-based navigation, we did have this in V2, didn't we?
Yeah, so in V2, you could create sort of different navigation bars for different users. So when a user will log into Squared Up V2, they get a personalized navigation bar. So certain users wouldn't see the navigation items that user would see.
Mm-hmm.
It just gave a bit more of a personalized touch to Squared Up.
But there was no UI for that, was there?
So you couldn't create the profiles for specific, I can't say the word.
Specific.
Yes, users, unless you went into the XML and followed our sort of documentation on how to create those files, which was a bit more likely that you'd cause problems. Whilst now in V3, we have a profile editor where you can create different profiles for different users and have a completely customized experience with that.
Cool. So for those of you who didn't in V2 make use of this feature, now it's actually quite easy to do that. We've actually got a coffee break on this we've covered previously. So if you haven't looked at that, go back on YouTube and check out the recording for that. But I wanted to highlight this just to say if you didn't use it before, now you actually can use it. And because it's very easy to do this, you can really spread it across your whole environment and make sure that the SQL guys get their SQL dashboards only, and or this particular app team and the only ones who can see a certain set of dashboards. We have a few other changes of like things you can do with individual dashboards as well. So page level time frame, if you previously used to create dashboards where you have this information for 12 hours, and then this other dashboard's the exact same stuff but 24 hours. Well, now you could create one dashboard and just flip the page level time frame.
Yeah, without having to go into each tile and change the time frame on each one.
Right, so that could cut down the number of dashboards you have anyway, right? You might choose not to migrate all those duplicate dashboards. And then data on demand is kind of a brand new feature that we didn't have at all in V2 that lets you run tasks and display that output on dashboards. So again, we've kind of talked about that before. We have a masterclass webinar on data on demand, but if you haven't thought about some of the possibilities that this unlocks, it's definitely worth going and checking that out, because you might, again, change how you're structuring some of your dashboards if you actually have this functionality now enabled. Now, there's loads of other stuff. And I've put a docs article link on the bottom of the screen there. So go and check out that What's New in V3 article, and then the 3.1 and 3.2 ones. If you haven't seen anything about V3 at all, go and look at those to get a sense of what's changed. But these sort of 10 things here are the important things I wanted to draw to everyone's mind when they're thinking about, okay, I've got a dashboard, I'm going to migrate it over into V3. Now, we said the dashboards are stored in a new format in dashboard packs. So I've got a slide here about this. So Andrew, can you tell me what are dashboard packs and how does Squared Up actually use them?
So dashboard packs in V3, we didn't have the concept of this in V2. So in V2, you create a single file and they wouldn't really be organized as much as they were all put into the same folder. So each dashboard the user created would be under this single folder. Whilst dashboard packs allow us to actually organize where these dashboards are placed. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you had a bunch of SCOM server dashboards or SCOM server perspectives, you could put them all into sort of one dashboard pack, which you'll see a lot through the sort of community dashboard packs, which are kind of a new concept we use, and you can go and import those. And it just generally gives a bit more organization to how you lay out your dashboards, and you can import them all together.
Presumably you can delete them in the same batch as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
Before you would have to go through each like sort of dashboard, find the dashboard you wanted to go delete, or find the perspective you wanted to go to delete. Whilst now you could just go to our new dashboard pack manager and delete that all at once, which I'm sure we're about to show you in a demo.
Yeah. So basically, my understanding, dashboard packs are a lot like a management pack in SCOM, right?
Yes.
So you import a dashboard pack and it lights up functionality for you, and you could either potentially author that dashboard pack, or like a SCOM MP, you got it from the community, you got it from a vendor, or so we have some vendors who provide dashboard packs for like Oracle, other products, for example. So NICE provide one for Oracle, and ComTrader provided a dashboard pack now for their F5 management pack. So you import these and they light up new functionality in Squared Up. Now I've got a URL there, so you can go to community.squaredup.com/dashboards and see a whole bunch of dashboards that people have put up. So in V2 we had a sort of a similar thing, but they were individual dashboards, weren't they?
So you'd have to go and import each individual dashboard that you wanted into your environment, whilst now you could just get a whole package of useful dashboards, say like Linux servers, which is just a lot easier to import than going and finding each single dashboard you want.
Okay, well, on that note, in that case, let's go to our first demo, which is going to be importing some dashboard packs. So let me go and have a look at this. So here is Squared Up. So if I go, we paste this front and center, which is great. So if I go up here into the top right menu and go to import dashboard packs, we get this lovely screen where we can actually see and search for dashboard packs that are up on community anyway. So you could go to the URL that I showed you in the slide deck, or you can actually do it directly in product. So let's say, for example, that I have some Kemp load balancers in my environment and I want to have some dashboard pack for that. So I think, let me try the HP UX one. So look at our packs. This is where we see the search, if I can actually search for it properly. Okay, give me an example. Then. Let's say I want to install the DHCP management pack. So I can actually just hit install here. And it will actually download and import that. If there are any dashboards in that pack, they're now available on the nav bar. So I can go in here. I don't think this is going to light anything up, unfortunately. It's always in the demos where you can't find the right term. But like, so we have ones on here for Oracle. We have ones on here for Kemp load balancers, HP, Linux, Unix. If you just installed Squared Up v3, there aren't any Linux dashboard packs installed by default, but you can go and grab them from here. We've got some for Exchange, Active Directory, and obviously community members can contribute these. So for those of you who feel like actually helping out with this sort of stuff, because we don't run, massive Exchange environments, massive VMware environments, so we can't really build great dashboards for this. But if you have got a great set of dashboards, you think, it's really killer for this app, everyone should have my sort of linked dashboards, I'd be happy to share those. Get in touch and we'll get them uploaded to community. And in fact, that's what demo I was trying to show. We have some community contributors who have put dashboard packs in for Kemp for the HP UX. So I'm trying to give them a little bit of love by showing those two off. So if I hit all,
hit all, and then hopefully you'll be there somewhere.
There we go. There's the HP. I don't know why searching that didn't actually bring it up, but there we go. So I can install that as well.
And that pops up in the nav bar.
Yep. There's the Kemp one. So I install that as well. There we go. And I just start showing up. And obviously I can use my role-based navigation to get rid of these top-level items if I don't want them, but it's a great view into this. There we go. So this can pull in these dashboard packs, right? They contain not just dashboards, but also perspectives or new tiles or any other functionality we want to provide. So actually, if I go into these devices here, not only is it giving me a top-level dashboard, great, I could have created that. As you can see, it's giving me perspectives. So I don't just have monitored entity, I've also got interface, memory, processor, all these other things. Okay, so that's kind of cool. But we mentioned that we've got a new dashboard pack manager. So in version 3.2, if I go to settings, dashboard packs, we've now got the ability to expand. This is all dashboard packs here. So the system ones. So these are the ones that come with the product, right?
Yeah, so they're built in with the product. They're installed with the product. They include things like the VADA review, so visual application discovery and
analysis. Yeah.
analysis. The perspective for that, so you can go into VADA, also a couple other perspectives such as the welcome dashboard and just anything that like we ship with the product that we think is the most useful dashboard for.
So it's probably worth keeping these. And then the community ones are obviously the ones we've imported from the community site or from other places. And then custom dashboard packs, these are the ones that we've created, right?
Yeah, so any content that users create inside of Squared Up will be put under the default user created content pack for the time being. And then from there you can go manage everyone's dashboards, anything that your users are creating, any perspectives your users are creating, you can go hide or delete. And
so let's say, for example, I really hated the Server 2016 dashboard pack.
Yeah.
I can just delete it from here and then it's gone from the product.
So if you're deleting a community dashboard pack dashboard, you can hide it at first. So if you go delete that, it'll give the ability to restore it. So in cases that you don't want to remove a community dashboard and like you just want to hide it from users, you don't really want to see it around, you can go delete it. That also gives the ability to restore. So at the moment, whilst it was deleted, no user would be able to see it. So if you go scroll up to...
Oh, we've moved everything around in here, so it probably
so if you go under, SQL, you see
it's gone.
It's gone. If you go restore it now,
there we go.
people
There we go.
will be able to access. Yeah,
So it has appeared
dashboard
it's just,
again.
in the wrong order.
And also, so from that view, you can go delete and hide stuff from people. But if you were to delete the entire dashboard pack, so the very top level deletion, that will remove the community pack from disk.
So it's the same as just uninstalling the
Yeah.
SCOM management pack, and if you want it back, you just go and
So you can apply an override to hide it from users if they don't want to see it.
So, and this functionality, this is globally, right, as well. So if I say delete here,
Yeah.
no users can see it.
So
If
no users will be able to access that dashboard at all.
Whereas if I want to hide it from a specific group of users, I need to use role-based navigation to do that.
Exactly.
Right, okay, that makes sense. Now, so the reason I mention this is because the migration tool actually moves things across and puts them in a pack, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So let me flip over, let me give you control. So you've got a demo here, haven't you, of...
So the migration tool works a bit differently in that we create dashboard packs for under the custom dashboard packs section. So here you can see that there was a migrated pack, and the packs are created based on the submenu items. So before migration, we have this convert to perspectives submenu. So when that's migrated across from V2, if we have a look at this V2 instance, it came up as a submenu. All of those items inside of it are put into a dashboard pack of its own creation called with the same name as the submenu.
Okay. So that's why it's called convert to perspective migration.
Yeah.
That's what
So
it's called
it's
there.
based on the submenu name, and it's just got a standard user migrated pack label to it. So originally we were going through some issues in terms of that users couldn't go and delete any of these sort of dashboards. So when you're migrating content from V2 to V3, don't know why that just happened.
It's not having...
well, there goes my RGB connection. Hopefully it's
so
back.
Wi-Fi can tell when you're on demos.
Yeah. So you can go delete any of these dashboards now. So if I was to click on here, you can now hide these. So they work in the same way that community dashboards will work. So if you want to go hide or delete any of your migrated dashboards that say content from V2 that you've migrated across, but you found, actually, I don't have a need for this in V3, or hey, I want to create a completely new perspective or completely new dashboard, then you can go and actually delete these now and hide them.
Cool. So this also means that, like, if you have a dashboard where you're like, I don't think anyone uses this, but actually someone might, you could delete it, and then you got the restore button there, so you could always restore it so that it comes back if someone actually goes, hey, where's my dashboard gone? Alternatively,
if you find that there's a submenu item that you just really don't want, and that like, oh, I don't want this submenu, you can just go delete that entire pack.
Cool.
And remove it from the instance.
So if you're bringing across like 100, rather than having to migrate like individual dashboards, if you bring across like 100 odd dashboards and there's 3 you don't want, you can just kill those 3.
Now you'll see that it's nowhere else to be found on that navigation bar. It's just completely removed from the instance.
Cool. So we've had a look sort of at dashboard packs in the product. So can you actually show us dashboard pack like on disk? Because we mentioned that we've changed the format a bit.
Yes. So in here, this was just an example sort of pack JSON. So if I go and actually find...
So if you back up a second, so can you go to like the on disk, like where these actually are located and show us that?
So it all depends on where you've created your applications. So for example, in here, I've installed Squared Up v3 sort of to the default installation location.
Right.
And this is the root folder. So all of the user content that is created by users in Squared Up is stored inside of user, which is quite a nice name to give it. You know where it's going to be. This contains everything from licenses, configuration items such as your SCOM connection details or any like web API providers. Anything else is contained in here. But any of your actual dashboard packs are stored under the packages. So if we go in here.
So it's one folder per pack, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So inside here, you'll find that there's a couple packages, everyone package being any user data that's been created inside of V3. And here you can see migrated dashboards, which is just a pack that's created when you run the migration tool. Any items that aren't organized on the or set on the navigation bar will be put under migrated dashboards. So in here, this is the sort of structure of the package itself. So we have dashboards, perspectives, and resources. The resources folder contains any images or Visio files or SVG images that SVGs that can be used by tiles. So for example, if you had a Visio tile in there, you'd find a SVG for that Visio.
Right, or an image tile, same thing, you have the image in there.
Exactly. And it's all sort of kept together by this pack JSON, which is what shows up in the dashboard pack manager. For example, you could see this a user migrated pack is shown on the dashboard pack manager along with its internal name, which is like the submenu item name, or in this case, just the default migrated pack.
Right.
Along with author and version.
And just a note here for anyone who's thinking of creating their own dashboard pack, that ID number at the top there, that has to be completely unique.
So they all have to be completely unique, otherwise you get a lot of issues when you're trying to load up Squared Up. So make sure that this whole property up here is unique. Yeah.
For those of you who are au fait with PowerShell, you can actually create a new GUID fairly easily in PowerShell. If you just Google like create new GUID PowerShell, you'll see that it's a one-liner. It's like 10 characters. Cool. So that's the pack.json file.
Yeah.
Can you show us a dashboard?
A dashboard? I've got it open over here, luckily.
Okay.
So this is like a really sort of stripped down dashboard, for example. All it has is a status tile in it. Let's get that across. And inside of it, you'll see that, I don't know what I'm pointing. You'll see that this is the actual tile itself and all of its configuration. So for example, you have different properties saying like we want to order this by its descending, and we also want to order it by the health state that's on the on the tile.
Yeah.
Sorry, from the return data of the status tile. So you want to order it by the health state here, and then you have the SCOM group ID here, which is what actually grabs all of the objects that you want to display on the status tile.
So that's the ID from the SCOM SDK, basically. Yeah. Can you just flip up the XML as well, just to show us?
Yeah. So over here, I've got the same dashboard that's over in V2 of the product. So when we're migrating across, there's quite a few like different properties from XML and JSON that we can map across.
Right.
So for example, you can see straight away, if we scroll down, this is a section.
Oh yeah.
In V2. So we've changed it to become tiles now. So you'll see here it's a tile.
Yep.
Tile status. Whilst over here it's now a plugin of the status.
Yeah, so there's definitely some translation there involved in the actual format. And then, again, like we said earlier,
like
that
you can see group ID maps across, and like all the scoping properties, we can actually migrate those across.
So you don't have to do this by hand, do you? Because we've actually got a migration tool, haven't we?
That's the reason that we created the migration tool. Like if you were to go through this by hand and try to actually create a JSON dashboard, it would take you way too long.
Well, it would take you less time than it would creating the XML by hand, that's for sure. Because as you can see,
XML is
the JSON is a lot more compact.
It looks a lot nicer in JSON, definitely.
Cool. Okay, so let's jump back to slides, and we'll just talk about the actual migration tool. We mentioned it now until it converts dashboards, so let's take a look at that. The migration tool, we've mentioned that it's something we've been working on now. We've had the migration tool since we launched V3. What can you tell me about it?
So the migration tool simply, its actual actions is in the name. So for example, it migrates from V2 to V3, and along the way it will convert any XML dashboards into JSON dashboards instead, as well as profiles. So for example, navigation items or user-based profiles will be migrated across as well.
So it's just a PowerShell script, right?
Yeah, and it's just a PowerShell script from the base. It requires version 3 of PowerShell above, based on the fact that it has to use a convert from JSON commandlet, which isn't available in earlier versions of PowerShell.
And does it come with the product, or?
So it's not shipped with the product. We have a direct download page that you can go to. It's just download.squaredup.com, and you can go find a bunch of other scripts as well as our management packs, and obviously the migration tool is hosted on there as well.
Right. So it does a translation between V2 to V3. We've noted there that on the slides that if a feature has been sort of superseded by something else, because we have actually taken some sort of concepts in V2 and said, well, we're going to rework these. The migration tool does its best to try and use the new feature instead, right?
So in some cases, the mapping doesn't go across. So for example, the KPI tile doesn't get migrated across, but for other tiles such as status tile, SQL tile, and most other sections and plugins in V2, we will try our best to migrate those across, and any features that are available in V3 will be migrated across from V2.
Cool. And the script actually got quite a few different sort of parameters, isn't it? So we'll talk about this later on, I think.
So there's a couple of behaviors that some users might not want to migrate the whole of their V2 instance across, and we'll go over a couple ways that you can change how you run it.
Okay, so it isn't necessarily just a case of run the tool and you're done. There is actually some sort of caveats to it.
I mean, you can if you want, and that does pretty much everything you want, but in some cases.
Right, you might be more specific about it. Okay, cool. So let's just talk about a bit about the actual V2 sort of migration and what the path is here. So every deployment has its differences, but the general workflow that we sort of anticipate most people will follow is you've got your V2 instance and it's time to actually migrate across. The first thing you have to do is contact sales, so sales@squareup.com. What they'll do is they'll give you access to a portal where you can plug in your V2 production key, so you'll need that, and obtain your 45-day migration license. So this is a license you can use to stand up Squared Up version 3, do the migration onto it, play around with new features, and sort of decide whether you're happy to move across at the moment or if there's any blockers. And obviously you can contact support as well here at Squared Up to get assistance with any issues you might run into. And then you'll install your Squared Up V3 box. So you can either install it on the same V2 box or a brand new server. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, so you can keep it on the same box or any other server.
Cool. And then basically the hard part then of the migration is to review your existing dashboards and also your usage patterns.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, you might have 1,000 dashboards, but if your users use 12 of them and no one else uses the rest, is it worth migrating them? Or we talked about perspectives earlier on. If that's radically changed how you're doing things, or now that you have perspectives and you can use them as sort of templates, maybe creating DAs is something that's worth doing now when it wasn't previously, and then you can just create perspectives as templates on those to say every application gets these 10 perspectives automatically just by being the nature of a DA. So I would encourage you not just to look about how can I get my existing dashboards over, review the capabilities in V3, think about your overall monitoring strategy. How is monitoring going in your organization? Is anyone actually using this concept where our original dashboards sort of maybe not that much of a hit and we have to rethink them? If you want an example of this, check out the coffee break we did a few weeks ago with Sean Williams from Purdue, because he talks through exactly this, right? They had a look at their monitoring, they had many failed monitoring projects, and they thought, right, let's do this right this time. So it's definitely worth sort of considering that. Then migrate over, which is basically a case of running the migration tool and then tweaking settings or filling gaps if there's dashboards that didn't migrate over properly. And that we'll actually have a demo of that in a second as well, so you'll be able to see what that looks like. And obviously creating new dashboards that you need to that maybe we couldn't migrate across, or maybe this is a brand new dashboard you didn't have before and you think, actually, this is the way forward now. We're going to, rather than migrating, we're going to have a clean break and we're going to create some content from scratch. Now, the last two bits there is you need to do a cutover. That will depend on your environment. Do you have load balancers? Have you installed on the same server or not? But basically, you'll have some kind of way you'll push users over to V3 by updating the URL, giving everyone a new URL, or putting a HTTP redirect rule in IIS, or perhaps you'll update the CNAME in DNS so it points to the new server. At the point that you do that, Squared Up V3 is now sort of your production license. What you need to do then is contact sales again and let them know that you've now gone to production with V3, and they will issue you with your V3 production license. What they'll also do, that will also mark your V2 instance as now being decommissioned, but Squared Up will still support that V2 instance for another 45 days. So if you cut over to V3, everyone's happy with it in production, and then 10 days later you realize, oh, actually we need to go back to V2 for whatever reason, we missed a feature, we didn't understand someone's needs, we still need support on V2, you still have that sort of 45-day grace period. And I should note, we're very flexible with these periods as well. So if you need, a migration license longer than that, we can extend it. So it's not 45 days, it's 90 days or whatever. That's not a problem. Just get in touch with us and let us know, and we'll do our best to help you out. So that's a lot of talking. Let's actually do a migration. So we've got some demos here on using the migration tool, right?
Yep.
So we're going to see two demos. One's the standard.
Yeah, so the standard base deployment, so migrating from the default sort of Squared Up V2 directory into a sort of default V3 directory.
Cool, and then we're going to look at some of the extra optional stuff as well. And just want to note as well, the download, there's a download link there for the migration tool, and also we have a KB article on using that, goes into all the different options as well. So after the webinar, definitely check those two out. Okay, I'll hand control back over to you, Andrew. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So as mentioned, we've got the download page, so I'm just going to go through the process of sort of downloading and running the script.
Okay.
So first of all, go download this, and open it up in my instance here, wait for it to download, and we're good. So first I'm just going to extract all of this, at which point I can now run the script on my instance. So you have to run the migration tool as an administrator because we do a couple sort of changes to files. So against the v3 instance, we don't change anything to do with your v2 instance. So there won't be any change to v2 instance. So you don't have to worry about that. The only instance we change is v3.
Okay.
So to run it, simply, you just got to do /migration tool.ps1.
Right, so that's from the path where the tool's downloaded here in this case.
So in this case, I've opened up the PowerShell command line in the same folder that I've extracted the migration tool to. You can extract it to anywhere, run it from your desktop, run it from downloads,
sure,
and so on. And to run it, simple as that. You've got to make sure that you trust the script, though.
Right. Okay. So we've signed the script as well, so you can tell it comes from us.
Yeah, it will give you information that it came from us.
Okay.
So first of all, if you don't run it with any parameters, you have to specify where where your v2 path is. So by default, it thinks this is C inet pub www root squared up.
So actually, let's just back up a second here. So what's the setup in this particular server? Have we got v2 and v3 on the same box?
This server, we have v2 and v3 in the same box, and they're both. And there goes my IDP. They're both. So they're both running off the default path that you can specify when you install Squared Up v2 and v3.
Right, so you've got two different apps in IIS, one for v2, one for v3.
Yeah, and they're running side by side. So hopefully that's going to be okay now. So in this case, because I'm using default path, all I have to do is enter no, and I'm good to go. And then now I have to specify the v3 path.
Luckily, it's saying, would you like to change this? Not, are you happy with this? That's what you're saying now. Got it. Okay.
So in this case, we'll say no. And then it runs the migration tool and it will migrate all your dashboards. We also give information if there's any settings or sections that can't be converted. So if there's any KPI stuff that comes up that we can't convert across, it'll give you a count as well as any corrupted dashboard files that come across. So after this is all done, we can go and actually see if these changes have come across into Squared Up v3. So one thing you can do with the new dashboard pack manager is actually trigger a reload of all the packs.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I run this, it will pick up if any sort of on-disk changes have happened.
Okay, right. And then...
So hopefully we should pick up that all of this stuff was migrated across. Unfortunately, if you're trying to show any changes with the profiles, so navigation stuff, if you're migrating that across, you'll have to actually recycle your application pool for the changes to take effect currently. But as you can see, a bunch of new items have been added.
Right. And they're all in the more menu because they weren't placed on any navigation
So
item.
if I was to run this, if I was to recycle the application pool, ignoring all these extra application pools.
Yeah, you can tell Andrew works in test, can't you? Because there's so many. So many.
It's meant to clean that up. Hopefully the navigation bar should show with a match against what we see in V2. So if I load this up, give it a second or two. In V2, this is the navigation bar I had. So over here, I had a bunch of sort of dashboards,
lots of top level items,
sub menus here. So like, I'll go over this point in a second. In V3, that gets migrated across. So instead of replacing the navigation bar, though, we merged the two navigation bars together.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about losing any V3 profile items that you've been added. So if I go look in here, you can see these are all the default navigation items that are shipped with the product.
Mm-hmm.
And after I've run a migration, I now also have all migrated navigation items.
Right, including the original alert screen, the original overview.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you had cleaned that all up, you would only get stuff that's on your navigation bar.
Right, okay.
And this also applies to any user profiles, so you can migrate those all across, so you don't have to worry about rejigging your navigation bar from V2.
So in this case, like the workflow here would be run the tool, everything comes across, use the dashboard pack manager to delete like the duplicate overview and alerts and server views, or pick which one you want and delete the appropriate one. Maybe you like the V2 one better. And then you should hopefully be good to go. So we talked about there's some other sort of things you can do with the migration script. Let's assume that you do that and actually it didn't all work fine. Like, what else might you need to do with the migration tool?
So there's a couple of different things you can do. If you find that you don't want to migrate any navigation items, and you're like, oh, I don't actually want all of this stuff on my navigation bar, I just want it under the more menu, and then I'm going to go in and like change that myself.
Right.
You can actually add an extra parameter to the script. So if I go run that again, all I have to do is add the switch. Can I zoom in on? No. Skip navigation bars, which is aptly named. So if I run that again, I have to go through these again.
And you can specify these parameters on the command line, can't
So
you?
you can also specify the v2 path and the v3 path manually. So as a parameter, meaning that you don't have to go through all these choices again.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, yes, I want to remove all of these previously migrated
cool.
stuff. This also removes any navigation items. So if you see up there, you can see there's a bunch of migrated navigation items.
Mm-hmm.
We can get rid of those on the second run.
So the fact that it asks if you want to remove things means you could do a phased approach where you move certain things over, or you could
so
keep
I
running
could
it
say
over
no,
and over again.
and I don't want to remove anything that I've already migrated. But in this case, I don't want those nav items. And then an error came up, but hopefully, if I recycle this app pull, should see that the navigation items should be removed.
Okay, cool. So it should be. So theoretically, we should just be back down to
theoretically.
It's always
Live
great when you
demos,
see red in the live demo, isn't it? Yeah. So, okay, cool. So that's a great way of bringing across everything other than packs. So
And there it goes. Wait.
This is the v3 bug with the nav bar. Takes a while to load up.
Yeah. Maybe not. So in this case, that didn't work. I have to look into that.
Sure, but they will just be hidden in the dashboard.
So in theory, if something like this happens to you, where your sort of navigation gets messed up, you can actually fix that. And I'll show you now as a little live demo treat. And you can reset it back to default. So I'm just going to my applications folder.
Yep.
And finding user profiles, and this is the default navigation bar. Also, if you have any issues, we back up the navigation profiles.
Right.
So this is actually a good time to show you how the backup works. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of the default because that got broken. Although actually these might be pointing at items that no longer exist. So I don't think I can actually back that up. I'm going to try it.
It's almost like it's the stage demo where you're like, oh look, it's broken, but it's fine. We've got a backup, and then you actually maybe not.
So if I just rename this back to
default.json,
change back the extension.
And presumably you'll have to recycle the app pool now.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have to recycle it again.
Okie doke.
This time.
Let's see if it's worked. If not, I guess we'll have some HTTPLs coming in.
Yeah. So this will definitely be fixed by the time that
the web recording goes up.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, there you go. So that's reset it back. So if you do have any issues, you can go find your backup and
Just
go
restore
through
it
that
back.
process and restore the
Cool.
backup.
But obviously, you'd be doing this as part of your migration, so it's not like this would be happening live on your V3. Like this is still in this phase when no one else is using
So
V3.
in theory, you'll be doing this against a test environment, so you shouldn't have too many issues.
So the other thing I happen to read the release notes for migration tools, so I know it can do this. We talked about perspectives a lot.
Yes.
And sort of the idea of migrating across stuff where we actually superseded it now. We used to have sort of page level scope and things with dashboards, didn't we? So you could say, when you view this object, this is the dashboard that should be displayed for it. But now we have perspectives which aren't really the same. Can the migration tool handle that?
So yeah, the migration tool actually has an extra parameter for this. So in a lot of cases, the default is that no dashboards get migrated over to perspectives.
Okay.
And so what I've set up in this demo V2 environment is a couple of cases. So for example, there's a case that in your dashboard, you only have like a drill down set. If you had a single object page scope set or a multiple objects page scope and so on. And so I'll migrate these across and show you how they sort of map out in V3. So if I do, what you can do is it's just a simple switch of convert to perspectives. And then again, this is where adding the extra V2 directory parameter and the V3 directory parameter would be really useful. And there's an error again.
Okay. So let me guess. This is gonna make the nav bar go.
Shouldn't change the nav bar now because there's no items on it. So in theory, this one would be a bit better.
So what we should see here now is that we drill down to we go to certain objects. We'll actually have. what used to be the dashboard that used to be a drill down set will now be a perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll show you how they map across for different cases. So here's the okay. There's also a bunch of information about this on the
docs page, right?
Yeah.
So we document there all the cases that we do and don't support, and I saw there's a log file as well. So presumably the log file for the script also says.
Yeah, and it will also say why exactly it's not being converted. So for example, here.
There we go. There's the list.
We've got a lovely set. A list of what gets converted to across to perspectives and what gets converted to dashboards.
Cool. Okay.
And I'll show you an example of how it looks as a perspective. So here's scope demo per. If we go up to the top, now I drill down into the actual object. This gets migrated over to a perspective, the drill down set. So now you can see here it's created a dashboard view perspective.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which can explain. So sometimes when you drill down into a perspective, you want to see it like as though it was a dashboard. So in this case, we're showing the dashboard title. So it interacts the exact same as it does in V2.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, you can go and see, hey, what other perspectives are on against this object.
Right. Okay. And I think we've talked about this before in a previous coffee break around perspectives and application monitoring. So definitely go back and look at that if sort of this whole perspectives thing and dashboard mode and things is new to you. So
just gonna reset that profile again because it looks a bit nicer.
So I think we've probably gone a little bit long for this week, so I think we need to sort of wrap up there. So the important takeaways is there is a migration tool to migrate things over. Obviously, you want to do this in your 45-day instance. Don't try and do this sort of all in one night.
Yeah.
Have a play around. Have a play. We'll get this fixed before it goes out.
Yeah,
have a look at some of the new V3 features and kind of think about how people are actually using sort of that squared up, how they're actually consuming monitoring data, and make sure that what you're building for V3 actually aligns to that. Because if no one's using V2 and no one's using SCOM, migrating everything across as is might not necessarily actually be the best approach that we want to look at. Okay, so as I said, go on Docs and check out the documentation for this and have a look through.
There's a list and it goes through detail on exactly what they do. For example, you can go pipe in folders for dashboards. So if you wanted to go get a community dashboard, it gives you an example of how you would do so.
So you could take a dashboard that's only a community dashboard for V2.
So in V2, where we have community dashboards as single like dashboards that you import, you could go extract a bunch of those into a folder and then run the tool against it.
Right. And then you can convert a V2 dashboard to a V3 dashboard if you want to.
And then place those files into V3, meaning that you have V2 community dashboards in V3.
Excellent. Well, thanks for showing that. Thanks for walking us through that, Andrew. I'm going to just grab the slides back again. So hope that's helped everyone sort of consider what's involved in a V3 migration and take a look at the possibilities there. So let's wrap up. Thanks for joining us this week, guys. Let us know what you'd like to cover in future episodes. Please do check out the squareup.com/topics survey. So you can go on there and suggest new topics or vote on topics that we think people will be interested in seeing. This V3 migration coffee break was actually one of the ones listed there as well. Yep. So hopefully that's helped everyone who voted for that. We'll be updating the topics list in a few weeks, so make sure you go and check that out and upvote things, because obviously if there's stuff that no one's really interested in, we're going to remove it from the list. If you want to see what's coming up next week, you can check out squareup.com/coffee break series. That's a microsite where we have the list of topics coming up and also a registration form. So if you've got a colleague who you think, they'd really actually like to see this kind of stuff, then you can go and they can sign up for it there. As I noted at the beginning of the webinar as well, for those of you who joined late, you'll be getting a new series of calendar invites as well soon for the coffee break series. So make sure you accept that. Otherwise it'll disappear off your calendar and you won't get reminders anymore when the coffee break's about to start. The recordings and slides are published via our blog for every episode. So these slide decks on there, if we have some links, like to links to the docs article, the migration tool, those will be in there as well. So check that out, as well as a whole bunch of other useful resources as well. So we have posts on all the stuff going on with version 3.2 released at the moment. And we have a YouTube playlist as well for the series where you can go and look at previous coffee breaks. Certainly relevant ones to this would be the one we did a few weeks ago with Sean Williams on his Purdue environments. That's a live customer case study. And we've also got a few as well on dashboards, perspectives, on total dashboard architecture, so all the things we talked about otherwise this week.
I definitely recommend checking out those videos. They're really helpful for like working with Squared Up and like figuring out different things you can do with Squared Up and just learning about SCOM and sort of related technologies.
Oh, thank you very much, Andrew.
They're great.
So thank you very much for joining us, guys. Our technical team are live online. So if you've got any questions about V2 to V3 migration, Squared Up 3.2 or any other Squared Up questions, feel free to hang around on the chat and ask those and we'll get back to you. Thank you for joining me this week, Andrew.
That's all right.
And next week we'll be looking at some more V3.2 changes, specifically around sort of ServiceNow and our web API integration.
That'd be good.
Cool. Thanks very much, guys.